YouTube, chicks. Get ready. You know what to do, chicks.
So look at Chick Smooth.
Hey, Chick Smooth. Appreciate all the coverage that you've been doing. I've been watching your shit for a while. I just subscribed to your shit too, bro.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy Chick Smooth. Today we got some breaking news. Shout out to my guy Daniel Wallach. He actually broke this news this morning. Starting off fresh, January 1st, 2026. By the way, Happy New Year's, everybody. Drake just got hit with a Rico lawsuit. That's right, you guys. I've got Daniel here. Dan actually broke the news this morning. If you guys are wondering, he's an attorney, and I believe that you're based out in Florida, right?
Yeah, I'm. Thanks for having me on, Chicks. I'm based in, I guess, very close to Miami. I'm in Hallandale Beach, which is halfway between Miami Beach and Fort Lauderdale. So depending on the audience, I either say Miami or Fort Lauderdale because no one's ever heard of Hallandale. And I could have broken this story last night had I wanted because I saw it come across the wire at about 10:30, 11, and I guess question why I'm even looking at this stuff 1 hour before midnight. But I knew if I broke it around the stroke of midnight, nobody would be paying attention to it. So I kept it under my hat and broke it early this morning, and thankfully nobody really scooped me.
Dope. Okay, cool. Now let's just give everybody what your background is.
Well, I don't come into this from the world of hip hop or from music. My interest in this subject stems from the fact that I'm a gambling industry attorney. I work with companies that operate sports betting, fantasy sports, and I focus on stuff like casinos, horse racing, prediction markets, and I take an interest in sweepstakes casinos, which is what Stake.us is. Stake.us is a crypto sweepstakes casino, which pretends to be a promotional sweepstakes, like they're giving away something in order to promote their product, like they're McDonald's or Burger King. But in reality, it's a workaround. It's a loophole that they're trying to exploit in order to operate illegal online casino gambling, like slot machines, craps, roulettes. They're not regulated by the state. They're not expressly allowed by any governmental jurisdiction, and it's flat out plain illegal, but they pretend that they're operating a sweepstakes promotion when in reality it tries to mask the fact that it really is an illegal online casino. And that's sort of where I come at it from that vantage point.
Awesome. Yeah. So over the last couple years, there's a couple of these online gambling companies that's been popping up. I don't know if you know RainBet. They're like another company that's also, kind of almost on the same level as Stake. And they've been reaching out to influencers and streamers, which is how they get promoted.
It's dangerous for the influencers and the promoters because RainBet and companies like Stake, they're not regulated and allowed in the United States. They're, arguably, I'll say inarguably illegal. I can't speak to RainBet, but I can speak with respect to Stake.us. They don't operate lawfully under state law. And these influencers and promoters that get paid in order to hype and sort of lure patrons to the site, they're promoting illegal gambling and could be held liable in civil court for aiding and abetting illegal gambling and for illegally promoting, illegal gambling. And they could face potentially, it hasn't happened yet, but they face potential criminal exposure as well if state governmental authorities or federal prosecutors get involved. And it makes me wonder, why would someone who's worth, 9 figures, with that kind of outsized net worth be gambling on something like promoting illegal gambling where they could face significant repercussions, either criminally or by having to pay out damages in class actions. But people like Ryan Seacrest are just promoting the site, whereas allegedly Stake is doing something far more pernicious than just promoting the site.
Yeah. Now, is there a case where maybe these influencers or, celebs, they might not know some of the inner workings of these companies, right? They just get contacted by their manager. They said, hey, we got Stake. Stake wants to pay you 20 M's a year. Are you down for it? All you got to do is just post on your social media. Just post anytime that you make a bet. That's it. So is there any chance that these guys might not know?
There's every chance that they do not know, because I can assure you that the agent for these influencers are not going out to hire like lawyers to give legal opinions.
Right.
They basically keep their head in the sand and they pretend not to know. But I think by virtue of having been sued so many times, there are over 150 class action lawsuits that have been filed against sweepstakes casinos, just like Stake, since the beginning of last year. Stake is a defendant in roughly 20, close to 20 separate litigations. So if Drake didn't know then, he certainly should be on inquiry notice now that maybe something isn't quite, on the up and up with stake.us. But I mean, they're allegedly, according to the complaint, he's being paid over $100 million a year and presumably gambles his own money on the site. But these lawsuits allege that the money is provided to him by Stake. So if these allegations are true, Drake isn't gambling with his own money. He's being funded by Stake and luring people to gambling on these illegal, unregulated websites. And Stake is one of the largest, probably this after Chumba Casino, might be the largest, sweepstakes casino website operating in all of North America. I mean, they generate billions of dollars in revenue every single year, and they attract, they attract people through social media and Google, and they use all sorts of tricks to advertise themselves to the mainstream. They don't operate in accordance with any guidelines or any rules, and certainly don't follow state or federal legal guidelines. So I can't assure you, but I would suspect that most of these influencers have no idea what they're getting into. I mean, it wasn't more than a year or so ago that Shaq and a number of other celebrities were sued over their affiliation with the crypto site FTX. And then when the whole thing went belly up and imploded, they were left holding the bag, because without any assets at FTX, the investors and people who lost account holdings, they looked to the celebrities, to make good on their losses, and that's potentially the danger here. While Sweep.us is an American subsidiary, its parent company and where all the assets are located are entirely offshore. So some of the influencers and celebrities are easy targets for class action plaintiffs and even for state attorney generals, because you got to follow the money. And if the money is located entirely offshore, the celebrities may be the ones who end up footing the bill on some of these lawsuits.
Jeez. Okay. All right. Well, let's dive right into this lawsuit. In a nutshell, right? This lawsuit alleges that Drake, Adin Ross, they're using Stake tipping services to basically boost his Spotify numbers. So there's two plaintiffs here, right? Lashana Ridley and Tiffany Hines.
Yeah, but they're not the only. They're not going to be the only members of this lawsuit. They're filing the lawsuit on behalf of a class, and the class, they're looking to represent not only themselves, but everyone else who's in the same boat. They're representing themselves individually and on behalf of all others similarly situated, which is legal jargon for saying anyone else who's gambled money on stake.us
a lot of people
anywhere in the United States is a potential class member. And this is designed, even though the lawsuit asks for $5 million, the reality is, if this is a nationwide class action lawsuit that encompasses all 50 states, and it looks back, if they're seeking to recover as much money as possible that every class member put up over the last 4 years, which is a statute of limitations on a 50-state basis, we're looking at a potential damage recovery here, especially with Rico. The use of the federal racketeering statute triples the damages. So this is, if this were to go the whole way and survive motions to dismiss, motions for summary judgment, and it's left standing at the end of the day and goes to trial, this is a 9-figure damage case. When one class action lawsuit is filed in one particular federal court, it usually spawns others. And right now, Drake has been subjected to 3 lawsuits that are all in federal court, but this is the first one that alleges a racketeering conspiracy. So the theories are starting to get more creative, and the risk to him monetarily is that Rico claims, if they succeed, increase the number of damages threefold.
Mhm.
So it becomes that's a statute that's ordinarily used for the mafia and organized crime, but it's
Yeah.
increasingly used in the context of far-reaching conspiracies as well.
Yeah, I do want to quickly ask about that. Is there a reason why this was, classified as a RICO? Is that just for the headlines, or is this like when people think about RICO, people think about like you said, the mafia, the mob, gang members, but not for an artist and a couple other people.
Yeah, well, RICO was, I guess, initially used to target organized crime, but
Yeah.
over the ensuing years and decades, it's had broader application. But the challenge to RICO is that very few of these RICO civil cases in a non-criminal context are successful.
Hmm.
The plaintiffs' attorneys have made it really hard on themselves by framing this as a RICO lawsuit. I would have brought other claims. I know they brought a claim of violating the Virginia Consumer Protection Statute, but the plaintiff's attorney should have also been focused on state gambling laws and the loss recovery statutes
Hmm.
that are available under each state's anti-gambling laws. So by front-loading RICO, I think it sent a signal, at least to the gaming class action bar, that this may not be a serious lawsuit. If you're leading with RICO, I think RICO makes sense as a secondary or third tier claim, but I think the heart of your lawsuit should always be violating state anti-gambling laws. And most state laws provide gamblers, losing gamblers, with a potential right of recovery if the gambling at issue was illegally operated. So I'm
Hmm.
surprised that there were no gambling causes of action asserted, in that the plaintiffs led with the most difficult theory imaginable, which is racketeering, RICO cause of
Hmm.
action, which really makes their job infinitely more difficult. I have to emphasize this is a civil lawsuit. It's not a governmental lawsuit. It's not a criminal prosecution, and many civil lawsuits are filed against sweepstakes companies, and they rarely go anywhere. They either get dismissed early on in the proceedings because the terms of service with the website require mandatory arbitration
Yeah.
to resolve any and all customer disputes. And if it ever gets past an arbitration defense, these lawyers who represent the plaintiffs are not in this for justice. They're in this to collect a nice, big, fat contingent fee.
Paycheck. Yeah.
And before it ever gets too far, companies like Stake and the representatives for Drake and for Adin Ross and George Nagayan would probably write a check and cover the damages and pay the lawyers $5 million, $10 million, or $20 million just to go away, with Stake footing the entirety of that bill. So this likely will never ever land at the doorstep of Drake, other than having his name publicized in the case. Very few in the history of online gaming
Yeah.
and online gaming litigation, only one single solitary time has a case like this gone to a jury. And it was a $25 million verdict against High Five Games in Washington State federal court roughly 2 years ago. And that's out of hundreds of lawsuits filed against social casinos, sweepstakes casinos, and all other types of illegal, illicit gambling websites. And the reason why so few of them end up in a payday is because they either get dismissed because the terms of service mandate the use of arbitration instead of litigation, or alternatively, Mr. Green comes along and writes a check and makes the plaintiffs go away. Yeah, paragraph 1. I mean, right out of the gate, in every lawsuit, the goal of the plaintiff's lawyers is to grab the judges by the lapel. You
Yeah.
want to start strong. You want to establish your theme, and right out of the gate, this is a consumer class action to stop Stake, an illegal online gambling platform promoted by Drake to obscure transmissions of money in furtherance of their ongoing music botting campaigns from continuing to prey on customers and impose civil penalties on all defendants. So right out of the gate, you're hearing two separate distinct themes. That Stake is operating and promoting an illegal gambling website, which Drake is benefiting from and promoting himself, and Stake is being allegedly utilized by Drake and others to promote an artificial streaming campaign to artificially boost the number of plays on Spotify.
Interesting.
So you have the illegal gambling part and the illegal or the artificial streaming component, the bots and the engagement farming, which I don't know, that may not necessarily violate a specific gambling law, but it certainly violates the terms of service of Spotify. And Spotify is already a defendant in a lawsuit brought by a rapper. I think it's RBX. Is there a rapper by the name of RBX? If I messed up the letters, well, somebody, a well-known rapper, has sued Spotify for not policing, the artificial streaming and the use of bots to artificially inflate the number of downloads. And that kind of practice harms other artists, because if someone like Drake has an artificially high number of downloads that's not based on any legitimate, authentic, fan support, it comes at the expense of other artists who are going to recover fewer amount of royalties, because royalties are presumably paid on percentage of overall number of downloads. And if one artist has a higher number and grabs a bigger piece of the pie, that operates to the detriment to all the other artists. So that's a separate lawsuit. That's presently pending in California federal court. This is somewhat related to that, but it has the gambling aspect of it connected to it.
Right. I mean, this is pretty wild, because the lawsuit is claiming that Drake uses basically the live streams, giveaways, stuff like that, tipping services. How much of this is actually true, or how much of this do you believe is actually true? Is there any proof?
The proof will ultimately, if it exists, will occur during what's known as the discovery process, in which the plaintiff's attorneys can submit demands for documents to Drake and to stake.us. And, the evidence isn't required at the beginning of the litigation, because so much of this is entirely within the control of Stake and Drake. The plaintiffs are making these allegations based on information and belief and on what's publicly reported, but nothing in this class action complaint rises to the level of evidence just yet. But they're not required.
Right.
With that showing when you file a lawsuit. The only requirement in federal court is that you make a short and plain statement of the facts, that the facts, if alleged, would constitute a viable cause of action. So in layman's terms, that would mean they're obligated to provide some specificity as to what happened. And if all the allegations are assumed to be true, does it create a viable basis for recovering money for a particular cause of action? By no means should it be equated with the truth or the evidence, but no plaintiff is required to come forward with evidence when they file their lawsuit. Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are exhibits attached to the complaint. Certainly, if you're a plaintiff's attorney, you want to make this complaint look as strong as possible. And if you have the goods on somebody, you include exhibits, illustrations of what occurred. You attach documents. I think there may be some. Maybe they did use some. No, this is one of the few examples where a gambling complaint did not use charts or diagrams or screenshots of the website to go with to indicate what's going on. I've seen over 100 of these types of lawsuits involving sweepstakes casinos, and almost all of them include screenshots of the online casino and how the games look exactly like real money gambling. This complaint lacks any of those attributes, but that doesn't mean that the complaint is deficient or lacking. We will not get to the point of learning the truth for quite a while, because the goal of the defendants, Stake, Drake, Adin Ross, and George Nagayan, they're going to try to get this case dismissed on jurisdictional grounds for not complying with the mandatory arbitration provision.
Right.
They're going to make a number of procedural type of attacks on the complaint without ever getting to the merits, because the goal of a defendant is to delay that as long as possible and to get the case tossed on technical grounds early on in the case, either because in the case of Stake, and Drake, they're not domiciled in Virginia. Why is this lawsuit filed in the Eastern District of Virginia, in Alexandria, Virginia? Drake doesn't live there. Adin Ross doesn't live there. Stake.us is not based there. Its parent company is based in Malta. So early on, I can imagine and envision one of the major attacks on the validity of this complaint is going to be based on the lack of what's known as personal jurisdiction, the lack of jurisdictional contacts to the Virginia forum between Virginia and each of Stake, Drake, Adin Ross, and George Nagayan. So over the next year or so, we'll probably be bogged down in motion practice over whether there is sufficient jurisdiction and or whether the plaintiffs were required to bring this case in an arbitration forum first.
Right.
But if you ask me where this case ends up going, I think they generate a lot of heat at the beginning. Certainly, when I tweet the existence of the lawsuit, it will generate 5 million engagements, which is a lot, and then people lose interest because nothing will happen of any substance in the lawsuit until it's either dismissed, and then when it's dismissed, few people will care about it, or it ultimately results in a plaintiff's verdict 5 or 6 years down the road. So this is the nature of the beast. I've seen a lot of these come and go, but for the risk to Drake at this point isn't a legal one. It's a reputational risk because this now impugns his reputation as an artist and accuses him of engaging in illicit activities in order to artificially boost his numbers on Spotify and other streaming platforms, and that could catch the interest of companies like Spotify. They may impose penalties. They may do their own investigation. This could potentially interest federal prosecutors or maybe even state attorneys general. So a case like this, I view as more of like a canary in the coal mine, where it's it's an indicator that there may be some trouble going on, and there may be some a story there, but it won't be the class action lawsuit that becomes the final stage of this. I think it could potentially interest the streaming platforms who conduct their own investigations, as well as state and federal governmental authorities. That's always the risk, and that to me is the interesting or the newsworthy aspect of this, in that it puts these allegations into the public sphere for the first time. And if there's any merit to it, there'll be other repercussions beyond just a class action lawsuit.
Yeah. So last year, Spotify actually started cracking down on artists that were botting. People said, well, Drake's numbers weren't really that affected by this cleanup that they were doing. So is there any way that, maybe Spotify just didn't catch it, or what? Drake actually, he hates Spotify. He's called Spotify Botify. So he's actively poked fun of Spotify helping certain artists or people using Spotify to boost the numbers.
Well, he'll issue a statement of denial, and if what he's saying is true, and he's not guilty of this kind of behavior, well, he'll come out and say that, and then in the lawsuit, the evidence won't substantiate the plaintiff's claims. I mean, that's really how it works. These are just accusations. They're not evidence. They're not findings. And it's also noteworthy that this is a law firm funded private civil class action. Those come and go. There are thousands of those filed in the United States every year. And some of them hit, many of them don't. And this could be one of the latter. But if you're an artist with Drake's profile, certainly having allegations like this injected into the mainstream it doesn't look good. Are problematic. So he's going to have to address it with a news release, a press release, some statement, because now this is the third time that Drake has been sued in connection with his promotion of Stake.us. Stake is one of the leading online sweepstakes social casinos, and they're paying Drake a lot of money to promote that platform and bring customers over to that site to gamble money on the website. And if Stake.us is an illegal gambling platform, then Drake is promoting an illegal gambling platform. So Drake has exposure here both with respect to the the bots and the artificial inflation of his downloads, which may raise other issues outside of this lawsuit. But the heart of this lawsuit is the promotion of illegal gambling and how the plaintiffs lost money gambling on this website, thinking that it was a legal form of sweepstakes or a social casino, and they've been harmed by virtue of the fact that they were brought to this website through these influential people like Drake and Adin Ross, and that they lost money gambling on a website that they thought was legitimate and not an illegal gambling website. So this is putting aside the headline grabbing aspect of Spotify and the use of bots to artificially spike the numbers at bottom. This is a lawsuit about illegal gambling in the role that Drake allegedly had in promoting this illegal gambling website, for which he was allegedly paid handsomely, over $100 million a year, and presumably gambled his own money on the website, when the lawsuit alleges that he never gambled his own money, that Stake gave him his stake, and he was basically gambling with house money.
Gotcha. Listen, Dan, thank you so much. I know you got to run. Let's see if Drake and his lawyers do respond to this. I would imagine Drake might want to put out a statement, because you don't really want your name in the headlines with bots. There's no question that Drake definitely, he promotes Stake. Him, Adin Ross, George, they all promote Stake on their social media sites, Twitters, Instagram. But when it's the case of using Stake to funnel into his music to bot, that's where I think Drake might want to act very fast.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and invariably in all these cases, the defendants always issue statements of denial, because they've got PR professionals sort of on retainer whose job it is to do damage control like this.
Dan, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, on Twitter, if you follow the story, I'm at Wallach Legal, WALLACHLEGAL. My law firm, which is based in South Florida, is Sports Gaming. The name of the firm is Wallach Legal. The website is sportsgaminglaw.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. But I think Twitter is probably the place where I'm most frequently visible when I'm reporting on these topics.
Please make sure you guys go follow him. Like I told you guys earlier, Dan was the one who broke the story. So everybody, please make sure you go follow him. If you have any questions, you can tweet at him.